Welcome back to Batica podcast, new episode with a very special guest today here in London, Mr. Mel Johnson, a very important scout in the Premier League history. Mel, how are you doing today?
Hi, Akim. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. I'm good. Looking forward to talking to you about my career, etc.
A special thank to Afner and Fils hairdresser in Paris, a very good hairdresser, for sponsoring this show. I'm very happy to be here with you in London.
Thank you.
After so many years. So I know you very well, but if you, let's say you meet someone for the first time, how do you introduce yourself? Who is Mel?
Mel is a football scout that's been around many years, like when I met you in 2007, when I came to France to watch a game and at a little training ground, and you were there, and
Right.
we introduced each other, and we talked about what we were, what we are. How would I describe myself? A scout that's been in the game. I had 35 years as a football scout, starting in the 80s. Did you want me to go through my career or introduce myself as a person, or where do we want to go?
No, I mean, I know you, as I said before, but when you meet someone for the first time, who is Mel? Even before that, who is Mel Johnson?
Okay, Mel's a guy that had a very ordinary, basic life and left school early, had various jobs, ran a business, and then I got in, always loved football, played local football, wanted to get into the game in some capacity over the years. I always loved watching football, always loved players, never really the coaching side, but always loved watching players. And then I got to know a guy that played at Reading when I lived near Reading in the 70s. And in the 80s, this guy packed up playing and he became assistant manager. And he started to go scouting and being his friend and knew I loved the game, asked me if I'd like to go with him to watch some games, which I did, and really enjoyed it. Got to know some people and thought maybe this is the way into the game for myself. And my son, Jamie, who is now head of scouting at Coventry City, was a young boy, and he used to play in a tournament at Norwich City called the Canary Cup.
All right.
And I used to go up and watch him, and in the end I got involved and watching players. And somebody went to Cambridge United. One of the guys went to Cambridge United that worked in the system, and he rang me one day and asked me if I'd like to do some scouting for him.
And this is how everything
that was
started.
how it all started around 88, 89.
Okay. That's. I think. Get me back to that time. I think. Well, I know. You saw at the very early age a young David Beckham.
Yes, I did. One of my jobs working at the Canary Cup, there was a few of us, and we were out at various pitches watching the games being played. And I was at these games were played over the Easter period, Good Friday through to Easter Monday, and we'd monitor the pitches. And while we monitored the pitches, we were watching the players. And if there was any good players, we had to report back to the guy that ran the tournament. Anyway, I was at a place called Acle, which is between Norwich and Great Yarmouth. That was my pitch for the day on a Good Friday. And there, in one of my games, there was a small blonde right winger. And I thought, God, you look a good player. And he was only 11, but he had some talent. And I found out later on in the day, I spoke to the guy and said, you need to go and watch this boy tomorrow. And he did, really liked him. And I know that his team were invited up to Norwich, his local team that he played for in the tournament, to try and get this player. In the end, he went to a bigger club, as I no doubt you're going to mention the name in a minute. 3 of his teammates did play pro at the top level.
All right.
And this boy, of course, went to Manchester United.
So how? I mean, because the scout, everybody knows that clubs have scouts,
Yes.
but not a lot of people, not so many people know what you really do. I mean, how do you do it? I mean, how you go, you watch the game, he's very young, they're very young players, and you see young David Beckham, and
Yes.
you can tell he's special, he's different.
Yeah, something about him. You know, he was an out-and-out old-style winger, if you want. You know, he had pace then. He got his crosses in. He attacked the fullback. He did what it said on the tin as a a winger did in those days. Now wingers are more inverted wingers, aren't they? You know, they're left footers on the right or right footers on the left, where David was a right footer playing on the right, and as a winger as it was in those days in the 80s. But what do you do when... it was only a small period I watched that younger player, because when I got into the game at Cambridge United, it was more or less 16s upwards really for the rest of my career. But at that level, you tell the person that you're working for, who was heading that tournament, and they would then obviously speak to maybe him, his parents, his club manager, and try their best to try and get him into the club on a trial basis, or his team as they did, and try and work their magic and try and sign that player. If they like him, of course. That was my opinion, might not have been their opinion.
Sure, but at that time, so you speak with the club, Norwich City?
Yes.
And you tell them,
yes,
there's a good young player,
yes,
you should go for him.
Yes, correct.
And unfortunately, the family and the player wanted to go to
Man United, because his father was a Manchester United fan, and obviously he took after his father and was a Manchester United fan, and he wanted to go there. And when they contacted him, that was it really. Because his grandfather, I understand, was a big Tottenham supporter, and I understand he did train at Tottenham at times.
So what year are we talking about here? 86?
Yeah, middle 80s, I think. You can track it back.
Yeah.
I think David's 50 now, and he'd have been 11-ish then. So you can track it back to mid-80s. I think
86, around 86.
Yeah.
All right. So now you moved to Cambridge United.
Yeah, I got to Cambridge United around 88. I got the call to say a guy was got the job as chief scout, and he was looking to start a scouting system. John Beck was the manager. They were in the old 4th division, which is now called the 2nd division. They didn't have a proper scouting system. This guy was going to start a scouting system, called me. I lived in the Reading area at the time, called me up and said, would I like to do some scouting, which was a dream for me. Didn't matter the level of the club. It was just being asked to do the job. And he said, would you like to do the south of England and do some scouting for me at Cambridge United? And I said, would love to. And that was the start, really, all those years ago. And... so just mainly I went to first team games in the lower divisions, reserve team games, which is the equivalent now of the under 21 leagues. They were called reserve team games in those days, and also players that weren't in the first team often played in those games. Players coming back from injury, so you did have some big players playing those games. It was the Arsenals, the Spurs, all those big clubs, the West Hams, the Chelseas. So I'd go and see those. Often on a Tuesday, Wednesday afternoon, they would play. They also play at the main stadiums. Yeah. You know, the Stamford Bridge, Chelsea, Highbury for Arsenal, Tottenham, White Hart Lane. So I would go and try and find the next diamond, or to loan for a Cambridge United, or somebody that's going to get free from those clubs for a Cambridge United.
You remember the main players you scouted at that time for Cambridge United?
Not particularly me. We took Dion Dublin on a free transfer out of Norwich City, who went on to play for Manchester United, of course, but that wasn't mine. Right. In the early days, I was still sort of making my way in, really, and talking about particular players, but I can't really put my name on a player out of that side at the moment off the top of my head that I took to Cambridge United. But I was involved in watching and following up players that did go, you know.
And you were enjoying...
And then also what I did also do for John Beck, the manager, I watched the opposition a lot as well, how they played, because in those days there wasn't the technology there is now, where you pick the laptop up and you can watch every game they've played for 10 years. But in those days there was hardly any film of games, and so they used to have opposition scouts, which I did quite a bit of that also for Cambridge, watching. So if we're playing, say, for argument's sake, Sheffield Wednesday next Saturday, I would go the previous Saturday and watch the shape they lined up, the free kicks, the corners, all those sort of things, because they weren't available in those days like they are now.
So you stayed there for what, 5-6 years?
Yeah, worked for about 3 or 4 managers in the end. And then the guy that took me left, a guy called John Griffin, came in from Cristal Palace as chief scout, who I got on with great. John left to go to Cristal Palace. I stayed and helped a guy called Tommy Taylor, who was moved up to manager for a short time. And then I got a call from John Griffin at Cristal Palace. Would I like to go and join him at Cristal Palace? And I got on great with John, and Cristal Palace was a step up. So I went off and joined Cristal Palace. I'm still a part-time scout at this time. I had a business which gave me my living, as well as being able to do the football.
I see. So now when you move to Cristal Palace, is it a new life for you?
It's a new life because it's better. We're watching better quality players and working with better players. Yeah, it's a step up in every way, really. A step up in the game for me. Going towards my ambition eventually would have been to be a chief scout. You know,
I see.
yeah, I love scouting and wanted to be a chief scout eventually, but I was taking small steps.
So this is when you feel like, okay, this was a dream for me, I believe.
Yes.
Be a scout is something that you love. And now you go to this bigger club here in London, Cristal Palace.
Yes.
How is it like on a day-to-day basis?
You go to the ground and the training ground's bigger. You go to the stadium to watch a game. It's a bigger crowd. It's a bigger atmosphere. And you're aiming towards the top league. You're aiming towards the Premier League. Palace had a couple of years in the Championship while I was there. Playoff for the first time against Leicester, lost 1-0 to a penalty. Steve Claridge, which was strange because Steve was at Cambridge as well during some of the period I was there. And then the second year we got promotion. Robert Hopkins got a goal in extra time against Sheffield United. Then we go in the Premier League and I work in the Premier League, which was... I remember driving to a Premier League game on my first day back on the new season, which was special for me. I was like the kid in the sweet shop, really.
I see.
Even though I wasn't a kid, I was quite an older guy, but I was the kid in the sweet shop driving to watch a Premier League game. I was, felt good.
So how is it? You go on your own? You go with other people from the club?
Yeah, with scouts, a lot of the time you go on your own. Sometimes you'll go with the chief scout. You know, I was close to the chief scout, John Griffin at Cristal Palace, was a bit of my hero in scouting, really, John. He passed away during the COVID. Wonderful, wonderful man who was brilliant for me during my career. John would sometimes come with me. I'd speak to him more or less every day. I'd go to games and players that he would know from recommendations. In those days, we used to read the paper. We used to read the CFAX on the television. We used to read magazines about players. You know, it wasn't a keyboard where you just go on a keyboard and get lists and lists of players. You know, we had to network. And it's always been a massive part of scouting, massive for me. And it was big in those days. But John would have a list of players and he'd say, Saturday, can you go so-and-so and watch him? Tuesday, can you go? Wednesday, can you go? And then I'd also find players while I was also at the game. And I'd come back or ring John on the way back home and say, John, I found this player or that player. I like him. I think he could play for us. And he would go and back me up, or we'd go to games together.
So what period of time are we talking about? 95, 96, 7?
Mid-90s. Mid-90s-ish, right. Yeah, 95, 60, 96, 97, yeah.
Do you recall the main players you...
Particular players, yeah. I can't really particularly... It goes up further on in
players,
my career,
yeah.
I can pick up more players that I really put my name on. You know, I was just backing up really from John's recommendations. Top of my head, I can't think of a particular player. I should have written it down, Joachim, shouldn't I? And that I dug out of nowhere, but I'm sure there was somebody somewhere.
Yeah, but you did a lot. You did a lot of scouting and you did recommend...
Yeah, watched a lot of games.
Yeah,
there was a constant turnover of players and games, and we had some top quality players. And I think the last season, more or less, I was there. We signed Attilio Lombardo from Italy. You know, we had some top players. So I've gone from Cambridge United, from getting non-league players in and players out of reserves to top players coming into Cristal Palace.
I see. Now you moved to QPR, Queen's Park Rangers.
No, I had a gap.
You had a gap.
I went to Watford.
That's right.
When we were talking earlier on. Yeah, I went on my summer holiday and got home and with the old answer phone at home on the old style telephone, even though I did have a mobile at the time, one of the early ones. I had a call from Kenny Jackett, who was assistant manager at Watford. Graham Taylor had gone back there for a second time. They were in what is now the first division, so they'd slipped down Watford. And Kenny called me, he left a message, I called him back. He said, I'm assistant manager, don't have a chief scout or anything like that. I need somebody to help me with the scouting. Didn't know each other, he obviously knew me, I knew who Kenny was. But and then went over to speak to Kenny at Watford, which is only half an hour from where I lived. I really fancied it. Right. Maybe in the next step on the ladder. And Cristal Palace had changed quite a bit. There was lots of stuff going on at Cristal Palace at the time. Change of owners and different managers and things, and Watford seemed a good opportunity. So I went over and had a chat to Kenny, got on great with him, and on we go. Got close to Kenny, similar to what I did with John at Cristal Palace. Watched players alongside Kenny. Recommended a lot of players, even non-league players. We took a boy called Lee Cook out of Aylesbury United, very small team. Right. Gone to watch two other players. We took Lee on a free, 17, played in the first team at 18 under Graham Taylor. ended up signing him later on, also Cookie, for Queen's Park Rangers. It was his team. Then he went to Fulham, come back to QPR, had a long career. But just went to a lot of games with Kenny Jackett. When you say on your own, I went to a lot of games with Ken. He was a really good football man. Had played a couple of 100+ games for Watford and played 30 times for Wales, etc. Kenny was a real football guy. Played the game. A lot of respect, still do to this day. So I had a good years at Watford. We promotion from what is now the First Division into the Championship. Then we got into the Premier League. Year in the Premier League, Graham Taylor decided to retire. Kenny left, Luther Bliss at Tom Wally, which was the first team management, really. Tom was the youth team coach. Kenny went to, I could have stayed. Vialli came in from Chelsea. I could have stayed as a scout. Yeah. But I got a call from Ian Holloway that had just gone into Queen's Park Rangers. Kenny had gone there as assistant manager, first team coach. And the chief scout had retired. So they were looking for a chief scout. Ian Holloway called me, 2001, we're talking now, and said, would you like to come and be my chief scout? And I thought, wow.
For QPR?
QPR.
You moved?
I'd had little tickles over the years about chief scout jobs at various places. Didn't feel correct, but QPR had a bit of a...
Well, you're moving fast. I mean, now you go to QPR.
Yes.
I mean, you have to talk. I think people need to know and to listen to your story, because I think your story is very special.
Thank you.
At that period of time, do you realize you become like a respected scout in the market? Because you're moving from one club to the other. It feels natural for you, but I mean...
I don't think you think like that. I think you just do the job.
All right.
And I was happy doing the job, and I love doing the job because I love watching football, which takes us back to, when I got in it. But I go in, and Ian Holloway, it's quite interesting actually. Ian Holloway did ring me. I was at home on a Thursday night, and a mate of mine I'd known many years, since I was about 18, 19, 20. Paul was a friend of mine. He was there. And Holly had called me and he said, I want you to be your chief scout. And I put the phone down. I went, I can't believe it. I've just had a phone call. I just said to my mate, he wants me to be chief scout at Queen's Park Rangers. Yeah. And to me, that was special.
Sure.
It was special. And I felt good. And anyway, they had a pre-season friendly on the Saturday, but I'd already promised to take a Watford player to the airport for the pre-season trip to Italy that Vialli had organised. So I said, I'll come in on the Monday. So I went in on the Monday to the training ground, and Ian Holloway said, we've got 8 players, we're in administration, we need to build a team. Just got relegated to the First Division is now, and we built this team on free transfers from 8 players to getting promotion 2 years later back to the Championship. And it was fantastic.
Sorry, how is it working with Vialli?
I only met him once. He had a guy that was his sort of manager over with him, who I really liked. But it was only, he came in the summer, so obviously we're not around in the summer, and went back in at the start of pre-season. But being part-time, you might just pop into the training ground once a week, or you go in once a week. And his guy, I'd spoke to him a couple of times, and he was happy for me to stay, even though I was from the old regime, and I would have stayed. But I got the call from Queen's Park Rangers to go and be chief scout from Ian Holloway, who I'd met and spoke to a couple of times. As you do, you get to know many people. And because Kenny Jackett had gone assistant manager, who I was very close to. And I fancied going to do that. And it was the chief scout job, which I'd always wanted.
Sure. So QPR is a very special club for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It means a lot to me. I had those 4 years until Feb 2005 when I went to Tottenham. But those 4 years building a side on no money. The fans are great. The atmosphere is always good at Loftus Road. And I built the side with Ian Holloway and Kenny. And they used to both come scouting with me a lot, which was great for me. I had 4 scouts who were brilliant for me. And we built this team and to get promotion 2 years later back to the Championship. Yeah. And they've never been out of it since. They've been up to the Premier League since, but they've never been lower than when I left. Really,
what a journey!
In February 2005. It's a special club, special fans. I'm still in contact with supporters from those days, and we had a reunion last year. I think it was October, which was 20 years since we got promotion with the old players, and it was a full room of people, fans, and we had a great night with that team that got promotion.
What year was that, the promotion?
2003-04.
Yeah, I see.
And 2004-05 was their team first year back in the Championship.
I can feel the emotion when you talk about QPR. I feel that.
Yeah, and we had special players, and we had a really good team. We had Kevin Gallen and Paul Furlong up front, which were outstanding players. We had Danny Shitter and Clark Carlisle at the back. We had some very good goalkeepers. Lee Camp, Chris Day. We got some very, very good players in. Lee Cook, who I'd signed at Watford from non-league from Aylesbury, who was a QPR fan. Martin Rowlands, we got on a free transfer from Brentford. We signed him with a broken leg. He ended up being our player of the season and then went on to play for Ireland. I have lots of stories about that team that we put together.
I see. No, that's very interesting. So, after QPR, why do you leave QPR? Tell me the story.
I left QPR, as we talked about earlier, when we enjoyed our coffees together. The reason for going for QPR was I had a call from Tottenham, from the secretary there, saying there was a job at Tottenham. Frank Arneson had gone in at the start of the season as head of football at Spurs, and he was looking for a scout to find the best young players, aged 16s to 21, in the UK. My name must have been mentioned somewhere, so he called me, see if just to have a general chat, see if I was interested. Would I like to go and meet Frank Arneson, have a chat about the job? So then I was juggling. I loved my job at QPR. I loved working with the people I was working with. But going to Spurs was that step up. Was it the next step on the ladder? I did go and meet Frank, which was fantastic for me to go to Tottenham's training ground and that step up now again. Met Frank, liked Frank, enjoyed Frank, knew he was a big player and big man in the game. Come away thinking, wow, this is good. This could be the next step up, working for this big club. And then I had to go back to QPR, of course, and tell Ian Holloway that, I'd had this offer. Well, I didn't have the offer then, actually. I had the chat. And then I got another phone call saying Frank would like you to come over again. And so I did, and offered me the job. So then I had a dilemma of, what do I do? Do I stay chief scout at Queen's Park Rangers, which I was really enjoying, no problems at all, or make the next step and go to Tottenham? Chatted to people, I was happy, and then one of them did say to me, "You got to go, because if you don't go, you always get the sack in football. We all get the sack. I can't believe anybody who's worked in football
at some time.
Maybe it's a little bit different now with lots of IT people that tend to stay at clubs years, but in those days we all eventually got moved on. So somebody said it eventually it will be all over for us. So I thought, okay, that made up my mind. But it was the best thing I did in respect of my career.
So sorry, you resigned?
I spoke to Ian Holloway. It's funny because we went to a game. We went to Derby to watch a reserve game or an under-21 game now, and I was panicking about telling him. And I got on great with him, and I was panicking anyway. It's funny because on the way home, I got out of my car and I left my phone in the car, and I'd missed a call, and I panicked. I thought it might be Tottenham saying about the job, and Ollie might have seen the phone and seen who was on my phone. So that was my get out of jail card to say, I've got to tell you something, Ollie. I've been offered a job at Tottenham, and but he was brilliant. He wanted me to stay, and he got me a rise, and so on and so on and so on. But I said I need to leave and move on, and that's what I did. And I started at Spurs in February 2005. Yeah.
And you were able to scout a lot of players for Spurs. A lot of players. We cannot call all the names, but Gareth Bale.
It was the next level. I had to find top players. So I went to from finding. We had a little bit of money at QPR when I did leave, but not much. So from finding a player for 250,000, the sky was the limit, really, going to Tottenham, and I had to find that level. So it was the Danny Roses out of Leeds as a young boy. It was Gareth Bale out of Southampton. It was Adel Taarabt out of Lens. So during my career there, they were the young players for my first 2 or 3 years at Tottenham. It was the 16s, 21. Plus, I was doing first team games as well.
Sure.
But my main on paper, I was 16s to 21 scout, finding the best young players. When I first went in, it was the Aaron Lennons, Michael Dawsons to come in. So all those, the best young players in the UK was my target, working under Frank.
You go very fast because it's natural for you, but I mean, Gareth Bale, how did you, the first time you went to watch a game?
He'd have been 15-ish, playing under 18s, under 21s for Southampton, and then of course he got in the first team at 16. But right. I'd watched him in a few games as a very young player. And then one day I said to Damien Comoli, I said Damien, who'd come in and replace Frank, who I'd got on great with, Damien, who's now at Toulouse, as you know. I said to Damien, there's a boy at Southampton, he's 16. I'm not going to say we ever thought he would score the winning goal. I think, get Champions League medals at Real Madrid, etc., etc. But I had a feeling he was going to be a player. And I said, Damian, you must come and watch this boy. And Damian was very good. He would follow up my recommendations, as Frank did for the first few months. And then I think Southampton played at QPR, and he played in the side, and Damian come back and said, wow, yeah, we'll look to sign him. So I then pass it over, because as me being that scout, I would find players, recommend players, then pass on to whoever was my senior above, really, like as in Frank Arneson for the first few months at Tottenham, then Damian Kamoli ever afterwards, you know.
I see. So for the people to understand how it works, Gareth Bale, young player, 16.
Okay.
You feel the player, you see he's special.
Yeah, I recommend Damian might say to me, do you know his agent? So I'd find out his agent, and then we speak to the agent, because that's how it happens. Whatever people might think, the clubs do speak to the agent. You know, ask all the information. How long is the contract? Easier to find out now. In those days, it wasn't so easy to find out the length of the contract. Now it's very easy. But we used to need to find out the contracts, the wages, whether the player would want to come, or whether the agent was directing him maybe somewhere else.
I see. What about Danny Rose?
Yeah, Danny, watched Danny play for England in the under-6. I think Danny might have been 14-ish then, when I think he was
very young,
in the Victory Shield for England. We used to have the Victory Shield, which was Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales, which the under-16s, which was a really good tournament for finding young players for a club like Tottenham. And another time, first time I saw Danny playing for Leeds under-18s, I had a weekend in the north. I used to travel a lot in the UK. I went up to Leeds on the Friday. I watched England 21s play Austria, and stayed in Leeds. On the Saturday morning, Leeds under-18s were playing at Thorpe Arch, the old Leeds training ground. They were playing Forest. So I thought, I'll go to that. So anyway, I went to the training ground. I'm stood in the corner. I can see this. He was playing left wing that day, small over the other side of where I was stood. And he looked very, very good. He was quick. And he was up and down. He wasn't very big, Danny. And I liked what I saw. And then I stayed over again, went to Burnley on the Sunday, and I watched England under-20s play Holland in a friendly, and then came home. And the next day I most probably went into the training ground. I could have spoke to Damien, I can't remember. We're talking 20 years ago, getting on now. And said, boy at Leeds, Danny Rose, young player. I think we should follow up.
How old you said he was?
I have a feeling, I've got this thing in my head that he might have been 14 playing under 16 or on the bench, but he'd have been maybe 15, 16, the most playing for Leeds under 18s on that Saturday morning when I realised following up from England Victory Shield game.
How do you feel when, years later you see Danny Rose, you see Gareth Bale, just to mention those?
You feel really proud. Really proud.
You feel proud, yeah?
Yeah, because when you have this thing really, I think the three stages, you find them, your club signs them, and they play in the first team. Of course, if they play for their country, it's special. Sure. If they score winning goals in the Champions League for Real Madrid, it's really, really special. But spotting that player, and he signs for your club, and then he plays in your first team. And that's my...
I think you also have some players that you did recommend for Tottenham. They couldn't sign for Tottenham.
You always
happens, right?
Yeah, you always do recommend players that maybe the person above you doesn't fancy, or you can't get them. Maybe maybe when you're a scout and your chief scout didn't like your player. Trying to think of a centre forward when I was at Cristal Palace, I saw a player playing non-league, a centre forward. I'll come back to his name in a minute. Because the mind has got a million names in it and a million years, or 35. There was a centre forward played for Hayes in the non-league, and I was at Palace at the time, and he was just a Palace type. And yet John, my mentor, he didn't want to sign him, but he did actually go on, this player, and play in the Football League and the Premier League. But John didn't fancy him, and you'll go to other clubs, and they don't always make it. I'm not saying they always make it, but people above you have got to fancy them. And then you've got all that deal, of course. You've got, does the player want to come? Sure. Is the money right? Is the contract right?
You tried to sign Dele Alli, right?
Yeah, Dele Alli was when I was at Liverpool. Because going on from Tottenham, we took a leap, but maybe we'll go back to Tottenham.
Sure.
But yes, I went to Liverpool with Damien again. Damien went into Liverpool, and he asked me to go there, 2011. And then Damien left, I think, about 2 years later. And I went to watch MK Dons play Spurs in a pre-season friendly, and doing my shape and players, and quite soon into the game, this young boy stood out. He was about 6 foot then, edge of the box to box, midfield player, good footballer, etc. Thought, wow, like you. Half time I was talking to an agent friend of mine, and he said, "Oh, he's my player. He's Dele Alli. He's 16." I went, "Wow." And so I put all the information into Liverpool, where I was at the time, and a good friend of mine, and still a good friend of mine today, who was an assistant manager at the time, and he got all the information about Dele and spoke really, really well of him, and watched him again. And I would have signed him, but it didn't happen.
How does it feel like when you say we should sign this boy, and the club says, well, for whatever reason,
it's disappointing, but you move on. You have to just go next, and that's how I've always worked. So you don't want to sign him for whatever reason. We move on.
Yeah.
And there's always another player, and there's always another list, because you always keep lists of players.
Yeah,
whichever club you're at, whichever quality you need, you keep different lists, of course. Like my QPR to Spurs was a different list.
Because you also tried to sign Theo Walcott.
We wanted to sign Theo as well as Gareth. And I remember going and watching.
At the same time?
Similar time, yeah.
Similar time,
yeah.
I see.
And, but Theo was always going to the Arsenal. So we didn't have a chance at Tottenham. But would have loved to sign Theo.
But you did try? You did recommend him? Or?
I knew of him because I'd watched him playing for England under six. I think he played for under 16s, Theo, but he was around the Southampton team very early, and I'd watched him very young. Also, another one, Aaron Ramsey, when I was at Tottenham, who came into the Cardiff side when he was 16, 17, wanted to sign Aaron. But
you wanted to sign Aaron?
Aaron Ramsey from Cardiff when he was 16, 17, when I first saw him in the side with Gareth at the same time.
That's interesting.
But there was a lot of players, young players around, Welsh players at the time. But the other one we signed, of course, Chris Gunter out of Cardiff, who was also a young 16, 17-year-old. Was another young one on our list that we did sign.
I see. That's interesting. So why didn't it happen with Ramsey? What's the story? You watch him many times, and then
no real story. The feeling at Tottenham was there was young players coming through at Tottenham in the position that were as good as.
I see. That's interesting. Look, when you talk with the player, he would tell you, I was playing in this club, then I moved to this other club. I felt better here. I felt for a scout. Now, because we talk about the players, you went and scouted. How is it like to work for Tottenham?
It was special working for Tottenham. It was. I felt special working for all the clubs I worked for. In Cambridge United, because I was in professional football. I was involved in professional football. I was meeting people that a lot of ex-players became coaches and managers, and I was meeting them on a same level. And for me, it was always special. And I'd meet a lot of older guys around the scene that had been players, big players, and it was special. Even from Cambridge up to the Tottenhams, through QPR and up to Liverpool. I even had a year at Newcastle, and mixing with football people that had played the game. That was a big thing for me.
I see. But how is your day-to-day basis working for Tottenham?
My daily basis was most probably I would go to the training ground on a Monday. Obviously, talk to Damien if it was Damien Camoli at the training ground. So I'd go in, say 9 o'clock. So I'd speak with Damien, speak about the weekend, speak where I went, speak where the other scouts went, spoke to where he went. We talk about players, talk about how the team played on the weekend, if we got injured, if we need, and then just talk about our players.
Right.
And then we used to watch DVDs in those days on the TV, and just mingle with the staff, really, just talking football. All day was football, with the managers, with the coaches, with the youth department, talk about the youth team, the youth players. Just generally swapping football stories. And then Tuesday, most probably coming Tuesday morning. Tuesday evening was always a football night. Most probably Monday night would have gone to a game. A lot of the times I would come in Monday, stay till lunchtime, have lunch, and go off to a game. Tuesday would be similar. Wednesday, everybody was off. Me most probably would go to a game on a Wednesday night, and then back in Thursday, Friday, and do the same thing. Saturday was a game, often Friday. And then I started to travel. When Damien came in, I started to travel a lot around Europe, a lot South America. Yeah. I met you, of course, in France. I met you in Colombia.
Yeah, as well.
So a lot of times I might be away for a week. I might go and watch Portugal under 17s, might go and watch Italy under 19s. I might go to Holland to watch a game. So the UK games, it would be in on a Monday, go to a game, in on a Tuesday. But if I was abroad, obviously I was abroad and wouldn't be in the training ground. So basically constantly on it.
I remember when we met, so back in 2007.
Yes.
Lille,
Yes.
I think it was a rainy day,
Yeah.
and you were watching a game, and you gave me your business card, and I think the year 1 year later, I called you. I said, look, I have this club in Mexico, Chivas. They want to invite the European team for a tournament, under 18 tournament, Copa Chivas. And thanks to you, 100%, Tottenham under 18 were able to fly out of London with me, go to Guadalajara, Mexico, to play this fantastic tournament, Copa Chivas. We're talking about Harry Kane generation. There's a lot of players. We have to call a few names, but you remember that time?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I remember going to Lille, to their new training ground, to watch the Tottenham under-18s. I think Damien must have said, we're going over to Lille, we'll drive over, watch the game. So we went to the training ground, as you say. You were around, and I think we made some eye contact and shook hands and said hello, and you must have obviously said you were an agent, and we swapped cards, and I would have watched the game, and then we had contact afterwards. I remember you saying about the Mexico trip and Tottenham and a contact, and I would have put you in touch with somebody, which I was really happy to do, because I enjoy that side of the of life and the game anyway, putting people in contact, and I was so pleased for you.
No, I think it's important. Sorry to interrupt you, but I know the person you are. I know you're very humble. You don't like to show off, but we talk about Harry Kane traveled with us, Andros Towsend, John Bostock,
Dean Parrott went.
Dean Parrott,
Yeah.
John Obica.
Yeah, who's still playing to this day.
Yeah.
And John, of course, I think John was playing last season. I think John, I'm not sure where he is this season, but I think John was still playing last season.
Playing.
Yeah.
And Poco as well. Polo, that's his nickname. So many players. I mean, we cannot call all the names, but there's Yuri Berchiche as well.
Yeah,
Spanish.
Yuri, the Spanish young fullback that I found when I went to Belgium to watch under-17s, England, Belgium, Spain.
Oh, you signed
in a
Yuri.
small
You signed Yuri.
And I recommended Yuri.
You recommended
so,
Yuri?
Yeah, so the terminology I use is I go back and recommend, and then hand it over, and maybe somebody else goes to watch them sometimes, because obviously Yuri was young. So most probably John McDermott's academy, somebody with there might have gone and watched Yuri, I can't remember, or maybe Damien would have signed him on recommendation. So many players, Joachim. But Yuri caught my eye playing for Spain against England or against Belgium, can't remember which one. Team sheets at home. We talked about team sheets, and then Tottenham eventually. Yeah, I recommended Yuri. I really liked him. Yeah, we got a pattern here: fullbacks and wingers.
Yeah, Adam Smith as well.
Sorry.
Adam Smith?
Adam Smith was already there. Adam came through the youth team. Adam was not to do with myself. Adam come through as a young boy. Adam's still playing at Bournemouth in the Premier League.
Sure. Now, I was saying he travelled.
Oh, he travelled, yes.
Mexico.
He was in the squad. I think there was 4 or 5 others in there that played first-team football.
The coach was Alex Inglethorpe?
Alex Inglethorpe, yes, who's done fantastic for himself, has been at Liverpool now for many years, Alex. And brought through quite a number of players at Liverpool.
And John travelled with us, obviously, as the manager.
Yeah, John McDermott, fantastic man. John I've known for many years. I first come across John at Watford. John was head of the academy at Watford. And then he went off to work for England the first time. And then quite early on at Tottenham, John was brought in to head the academy at Tottenham and brought through so many players at Spurs. Yeah. I don't think a lot of people know who John is and what he actually did, but John should take a lot of credit for many of the young players that came through at Spurs.
No, for sure.
And now, of course, he has the big job for England.
The last time I visited the club, they told me this is one of the best tournaments they did.
The Mexico tournament.
Yeah, the Mexico tournament.
Well, you've always talked about it, and it's getting on 20 years now, so you must have had a fantastic time, and I'm so pleased I could have helped you get the contact to put it together.
That was thanks to you.
Makes me feel proud.
So why did you take the decision to leave Tottenham?
Tottenham was different. Damien went. What happened was we had a poor start to the season. I think it was 2008-09. We won the League Cup, which was Tottenham's last trophy. We won the League Cup against Chelsea at Wembley. Fantastic. And then in the summer we bought new players, and we had a poor start. And unfortunately, one day Ramos lost his job. I got on really well with one day. I liked one day. He was different. Somebody for me to know. He's Spanish, brought something different to the club. Gus Poyet, the ex-player, was his assistant. Gus had a great career. the new fitness coach that come in. It was a really good staff, and I really liked them. Unfortunately, we had a bad start, and it was decided to make a change. And Harry Redknapp came in, and then I stayed till this would have been maybe the October 2008. I stayed till the following around September time, and there was a change at the club, and I left.
You left.
And I had a few months out. So I had a really good time at Tottenham. Signed some really good players, and it was good times. We had some really, really great players. With Robbie Keane and Berbatov and Gareth Bale, etc. We had some fantastic players. But so it's time for me to move on. Had a few months recharging the batteries, and then I had a call from Newcastle. Chris Hughton was manager. Chris had been assistant manager at Spurs, and I'd known Chris for many years. Graham Carr was head of football. Graham was a scout I'd known many, many years, and they both called me about the same time and asked me if I'd go and work for Newcastle. And I only had a year, but it was fantastic. That was the time when Newcastle were scouting a lot in France. So I came over to your country quite a few times and really enjoyed it. But I was only part-time. I'd been full-time at Queen's Park Rangers, full-time at Spurs. And then Newcastle was part-time. But it was okay. Really liked it. And then Damien went into Liverpool. And he called me. And he said, can we have a meeting? And it's another level again. It's not quite the QPR Tottenham one, but it's different. And I was offered a full-time job for Liverpool, working with Damien Comolli again, doing the south of England and abroad.
I'm sorry, you
have I jumped?
I think you're faster than the Concorde. You remember the airplane?
Okay.
I mean, everybody's calling you. You move from one club to the other. Tottenham, then you go from Newcastle, then you go to Liverpool.
I know. I know. I was 4 years at Liverpool and I was 4 years at Tottenham before, but I know we've gone through it really quick. Have we got all day?
Everybody's calling you. That's real. Why?
Football, it is about contacts, and I was very, very lucky that I was always had a call about a job. Very, very lucky that I got calls from really good people and offered good jobs. And
you enjoyed your time at Newcastle. Sorry.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed my year at Newcastle, working with Chris Hughton and with Graham Carr. I really enjoyed it, and I travelled quite a lot to France, as I say, Holland, a few countries, and a lot of games in the UK, of course, as well. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much. Working for those people, it's when you work for clubs, it's the people that make it. And when I work for good people, I really enjoy it.
So you didn't sleep much. You were travelling and
correct,
all
yeah,
the time.
And a lot of foreign stuff. I really started doing the foreign stuff when I was at Tottenham. 2005. My first real big trip was Peru. I went to the under-17s World Finals in Peru. But
the World Cup under-20.
Yeah, under-17s. It was fantastic. Different countries.
Yeah, sure, under-17.
Yeah, sorry. Different countries, and I got to enjoy the travelling and ended up going to when. At Tottenham, I went to South America, to Brazil and Argentina and Ecuador, and later on when I went to Liverpool, of course, I met you in Colombia when you were looking after Joel Campbell. Yeah, the Arsenal player, Arsenal winger.
Just before Joel signed for Arsenal.
Yeah,
and we met in Colombia for that.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So, Liverpool. So Damien Comolli is the one calling you?
Yeah, Damien called me and he'd gone into Liverpool, which I knew because I'd read in the paper. And then he called me about having a meeting. So he came down to London. We had a meeting and said, would you like to come and join us? And you can do the south of England, UK, South of England, first team. Well, he knew my speciality was 16s upwards, really. And so doing that in the south and then and going abroad. He brought Alan Harper, who was an ex-Everton player, who was a really good player, played for Everton, Man City, Burnley, who did the North, who I really got on with and still do to this day. He did the North, I did the South. We had a guy called Steve Hitchin, who Steve lived in France for many years, who we brought into Tottenham. I'm sure you know Steve. We brought into Tottenham and Steve came with us to Liverpool. We had a good group. We had an Italian scout. We had a scout in South America. Diego Caniggia was in Buenos Aires. We had a good little group. But when I just went there,
Diego Caniggia, sorry?
Yeah, Diego. Caniggia's brother,
is
the
he
player.
Brother? Okay.
The brother
okay.
of, yeah. He was our...
He was your scout?
We brought him in at Tottenham as well. And we took him to Liverpool as well, really good guy.
How did he happen to work with you guys?
He knew Damien, so Damien knew of him and brought him in, Steve Hitchin. Steve had been a player in England and he played at Blackburn Rovers the time they won the Premier League. And then Steve had some injuries, went to Macclesfield Town, finished early, went to France with his family, and was looking to get back in, and wrote to us at Tottenham about maybe a scouting position, and we took him on. And Steve's done fantastic in the game. You know, he ended up being head of football at Tottenham for a period, and he's still around in the game, is Steve.
That's interesting.
Need to catch up with him.
How is it like to be traveling a lot?
It was a new experience. It was great. And meeting new people again, meeting new people around the world, ex-players, coaches, managers, seeing different players. You know, because you can see when you're based in a particular place, like me in the south of England, I did tend to watch a lot of the same players. So when I started to travel the world, different countries, meeting different people, seeing different players, whole new experience.
How is it like, I mean, family life and working
You
and
have
traveling?
to have an understanding family. You have to. If you haven't got a partner that's understanding, you have no chance because you're on call most of the time. You know, I remember being on holiday when I was at Spurs, and Damien called me. He said, I know you're on holiday, but Robbie Keane is going to Liverpool. We need to replace Robbie Keane. Have you got a list? So even if you're on holiday, you can get the call.
Anytime.
But if you're not that way inclined, because if you don't want to put 24/7 in it, you're not gonna have a longevity as a scout. There's various obviously other jobs in the game will be the same, I'm sure. But scout, you have to be to be in it. You have to give 24 hours a day.
See, the reason why I wanted to have you here in my podcast, Batica podcast, is because not because I know you, but I think you don't get the credit you should get for all the things you do and you did. I mean, you work for so many clubs, and scouts in general, you know, because they go, they watch games, they travel, they don't sleep, they lose some family time, and sometimes then the player signs, everybody's happy, but the people don't know the story. I think it's important for you to express and to say, this is what I did, this is what I do. And I think a lot of people have interest in knowing that. They don't know.
Thank you so much for what you just said. No, that I assume that, you know, supporters I speak to, they assume the manager signs every player. They don't really think about where the players come from. Do they drop out of the sky? Do they just run out of the tunnel and play on a Saturday or a Tuesday or whatever? But yeah, you have guys like me. You know, there was a book out called The Nowhere Men, which was all about scouting that somebody did 10 years ago. Which explained about what we did, because nobody knows what we did. Nobody knows us.
Nobody knows, yeah.
Nobody knows us. And but yeah, you just have to love the game. You have to love the game and want to do it and put it in front of family. Unfortunately, you do put it in front of family. I'm sure all the scouts that have been in it many years will tell you the stories, you know, of us having music concert tickets, theatre tickets, or weddings to go to that we have to say, I'm so sorry, I can't go. I've got to go to Atletico Madrid on Saturday or tomorrow or tonight or whatever. Yeah, that's how it works. But people don't know, but you have to put the hours in. I did a talk for a university a few years ago, and 3 or 4 guys came up to me afterwards wanting to get into the game. And one lived in Barnet in North London. And I said, it was a young guy, I said, go to Barnet on Saturday, watch the under-18s, go and slide along to the dugout, have a chat to the kit man or the coach and see if you can get into the game.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to go to that level. I want to go to Man United. I want to go to Tottenham.
Yeah.
But you have to put the miles in.
Sure,
you have to put the hard miles
before
in.
you can get
Yeah.
there.
You'd be very lucky to go in at the top. You know, like myself, starting with my mate, going to games, then Cambridge United in the old 4th division and working my way up. And but yeah, it is about football first. I'm afraid it's not good, but it is.
How was your relationship with the other scouts, the other clubs, throughout the years?
Mostly good.
Yeah.
Mostly. You're always going to find good and bad.
Sure.
Mostly, I was very lucky that I get on with most people, and I'm a talker, and I like networking, and met many people over the years. And yeah, you try and keep your cards close to your chest about players. But if you look along the line in the stand, wherever you're sitting or standing, and you know who works for whichever club, whether it's your rival, you tend to know they are watching the same player. You tend to get to know who's watching who.
So sometimes you guys have to fight about a player?
Absolutely.
Right.
And then it's interesting when players go elsewhere, like, you know, as we signed Bale, who was fantastic. You know, we signed Henderson we signed Jordan Henderson at Liverpool, which was another one that...
you signed him?
Well,
Well, you
The last
recommended him.
recommendation with Alan Harper, who was the scout up in the north. We were asked by Damien and Kenny Dalglish was the manager then, after a meeting at the club to go and watch Jordan and make a decision. So we went and made a decision on Jordan, and we said, yeah, sign him. But I know various people have made comments about his gait, that his body shape, etc. And was that because they didn't sign him? Were we right? But I was one of the believers that 16, 17, 18-year-old, if I like that player, I want to sign that player. I don't want to go through the 3 months or 4 months of watching them because somebody else could take them. Yeah. I always like to make a decision about a player. I'm a yes quite early or a no quite early. You don't always get them right, but hopefully you get most right.
You also work for West Brom, right?
Yeah, also another one. The year at West Brom after Liverpool. Liverpool lasted about 4 years, and then that all changed and went to West Brom for a year with a guy called Terry Burton that's been around the scene many, many years. Terry, well respected, known in the game, and Mervyn Day. Mervyn Day was head of recruitment. Mervyn was an ex-player, was a goalkeeper, played at West Ham for many years, Leeds, many clubs, Mervyn, and left Liverpool, and he asked me to go to West Brom, and Terry Burton was head of football, Tony Pulis was manager. Different way of playing, different types of players, but enjoyed my year there. And then a friend of mine, Tim Breaker, an ex-West Ham player, still a friend today, was chief scout at Bolton. Different type of club.
Another
asked
club.
to go, yeah. And it's funny how you go through in different, it changes. And so I had a year at Bolton. Then I went back to Queen's Park Rangers in 2017, up to 2023. I've skipped through a lot of this stuff, Joachim, but please go back and say to pick out certain stuff.
But how is it was like to work for Bolton?
Yeah, another different style of play. Another club, actually, a little bit like QPR when I first went there, that had financial problems. So it was another one going back to the digging out players on free transfers and loans and building a team, which we did, and we got a promotion there out of Div 1 into the Championship. But a big club that had hard times, a little bit like QPR, and build a side there with a good scouting group.
You mean they had less money than the other clubs you've been working?
Yeah, well, when you go to Tottenham, there's money. When you go to Newcastle, there's money. When you go to Liverpool, there's money. When you go to West Brom, there's less money. But there's still money, but there's less money. And then you go to a Bolton, and there's the way they were then. We're not talking the Allardyce years. We're talking after the Allardyce years where they've slipped down and needed to rebuild and had different owners.
So when you work for Liverpool and Tottenham, they tell you can pick whoever you want, or
you know that there's some money. It's not always, because we were restricted at Liverpool on finances. We didn't have the period we were there. We didn't have big finances. We signed Suarez when I first went there. We just signed Suarez and Andy Carroll the first month I was there.
The first month you was there,
but that was nothing to do with me. That was Damian and Steve Hitchin.
Okay.
Well, Suarez was.
That's very interesting. I like the way you express yourself. Because you don't try to take the credit for what you didn't do.
No,
you don't take the credit sometimes for what you did. You don't express it. But I think here in England, I mean, you're part of the history in terms of recruiting players. I'm serious.
Thank you.
Even some stories you tell me about, I didn't know. I know
you.
you've since 2006, 7. And some stories I had no idea. So, but it's part of your education. Tell me more. I mean, because where does that come from? Home, family, when you were a kid? I don't know.
Yeah, I was an early school leaver, but always loved football. That was the thing. I always loved football. Always wanted to get into football. Always watched football. And when I was always in it, I was always proud to be in it. Always felt I was lucky to be in it. And I always listened to the ex-players and the ex-managers. Really enjoyed their company, and some still call me now. And I love the stories, love the football, love recommending players, love watching players. Get the thrill out of watching football. And I enjoyed the travelling, like you talked about the travelling, and you watch TV now and you look at Peru and you look at Ecuador and you see Colombia and think, I've been there.
Colombia was nice.
Yeah, and I'm just so proud to have been in it, and recommended footballers and watching footballers and get a joy out of watching the game, which I still do, even though, I came out of it in November 23. needed to recharge the batteries. I still watch games every day on the television. You know, last night I watched 2 games. I watched a game on the TV and a game on my iPad because I had different interest in 2 different games, because I've always, loved the game. But special to go into training grounds, meet people, recommend people. Recommendations were great. Used to love being in the meetings, talking players, recommending players.
You gave a conference in America some time ago, right?
I did
university or something?
I did at Wembley.
Wembley
for a university. It was a Q&A on my career, which I really enjoyed. I also did a talk at the Football Museum in Manchester, also, which I enjoyed with an ex-manager. It's remembering everything I did really. Like we had a talk earlier on, me and you, away from there for about 3 hours, and it's hard to remember all the players. Sure. So many players, and enjoy the non-league players. You know, signing Lee Cook as a boy out of Aylesbury United at 16. I actually went that day to watch 2 other players, which I didn't like, and after 5 minutes, I liked this other particular player, because that happens, of course. And it was good going abroad to the Peru 2005 for me, from where I come from, a small village out near small town out near High Wycombe, to go to Peru, the other side of the world, and watch all these special young players, you know, and watching their careers come through and going abroad, you know, like Yuri. You know, Yuri came to Tottenham, didn't really make it. I know he went out on loan to Cheltenham Town once, you know, which is a really small club, and then he goes to Spain and ends up playing top level at Spain, I understand. So
that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah, but to watch Gareth Bale, obviously, to come in and not have a good start, have his injuries, come in so young. I remember the first day he came in for his medical when he was signing at 17. I was at the training ground that day, and so it was proud moments, things that you can look back on.
You were 17?
He was 17.
When he first came?
Yeah. When we signed him, he'd come in for his medical and to sign, and I was there that day. He come to reception at the old training ground, Spurs training ground at Chigwell, and it was special. And then see where he went and see where those boys go. You know, like Adel Taarabt. You know, we signed from Lens. You know, saw Adel playing for France before he played for Morocco. Saw him play for France under 16s against Holland in a friendly one December, and. I used to use an A4 piece of paper and put the shape and the ages of players, and I just put next to Adele sign. That was it. I didn't put 5'2", left-footed, right-footed, whatever he was. Quick slope sign. And then within 2 years, I think Damien came to me one day. He'd had a call from an agent. Do you know a boy called Adel Taarabt? I went, yeah. He said about him, and I said, oh, Damien, special talent. Yeah. And he said, will you go and watch him again? So I went on the Eurostar. He was playing on a Sunday for the second team in Lens. He'd already played for the first team. Paid a Euro, got a team sheet, watched him, and Damien watched him, and then we signed him. I think he was in the first team by 18, Adele. Yeah. Had a great career.
He was
still playing now, yeah? Still playing in Saudi, is he?
I think he's still playing.
What would he be, 35 maybe?
Yeah,
coming
probably,
up, maybe, yeah. Great career. Was it Inter Milan, Benfica?
I didn't even know that one.
You didn't know Adel? Ah, okay.
I didn't know that you were involved in that. In that
Adel Taarabt, yeah.
I don't know. Of course, I know the player.
So many that you not say you forget about. You have this conversation, and they sort of come back to you, really, you know. But it's contacts. You know, it's like when we signed Dean Parrott at Tottenham. You know, I knew Dean's mum and dad because when he was a young player at Queen's Park Rangers, and mum and dad used to come to the training ground, and we used to talk and. So lots of things, contacts, like with my jobs, as you say, you know, people call you. Are you interested?
There's a lot of emotions, you know, when we listen to what you say, and I know you don't like to call players, you know, you don't like to show off. But if you had to send some message to all these players that you're part of their lives, you know, what can you tell them?
I'm so proud. I am so proud. And it makes me smile every time I read about them or see them on the TV, or somebody talks about them. I'm proud that I had a part of their career.
And you feel, I think maybe you don't feel like you're a family member, but in terms of business, in terms of their careers, you're part of that.
Yeah, I'm so pleased, and it's nice for me when I talk to friends or when people talk to football about me that I was involved. Little old me was involved in their careers. You know, for Gareth Bale to come from Southampton to go to Real Madrid, win Champions Leagues. You know, wow, that was that little 16-year-old that I recommended to Damien to sign for Tottenham. And then you see him scoring that scissor kick, overhead kick for, in the Champions League final. Wow. Little old me.
It's special.
Yeah. You know, those players, many players that have gone on, and you see them. Even the players that didn't play top level, that had really good careers, that you're involved in having really good careers.
I see.
That you're really proud of. Even if they only played in Div 1, Div 2, doesn't matter. The professional footballers would have won leagues and did things. Doesn't always have to be those top ones, Lots of them played in the lower leagues and have had good careers, and I'm really proud of them as well. And you might bump into them at times, Like I remember I was at Wembley when Michael Dawson was captain of Hull late in his career, got promotion on a playoff day to the Premier League only a few years ago. And as Michael was walking down, he had the trophy and I shook his hand and we smiled at each other. And I think he did remember it was me that worked at Tottenham with him when he signed. He wasn't my player. Yeah. I'd actually watched him playing for Nottingham Forest Reserves with Ian Holloway at QPR, trying to sign him on loan. And later on I go Spurs, of course, and we signed him.
Sure.
With Aaron Lennon, etc.
It was really special for me, to be here in London, have you on Batica podcast, with all these stories after so many years. I'd like to thank you. And I really had a special time with you. I don't know how you felt, but I really had a special time with you, Mr. Mel Johnson.
It's been fantastic, Joachim. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for asking me to come and talk to you and come on your podcast. Thank you so much. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
Make sure you don't miss any Batica episode on YouTube and Spotify. Talk to you soon. More episodes to come. Here in London. Thank you. Bye.